Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cut It Out. This is a brand new vlog series with John Panazzo of ColorByte Software and myself, Pete Wright with Canon. John is the president of ColorByte Software and developed this amazing solution with ImagePrint Red software. I am Pete Wright with as a technical marketing analyst at Canon. I work in the large format solutions, and we're actually going to talk today a little bit about where the entire cutting solution came from, kind of where the start was, the idea behind it, and how it's developed to where it is now. I can tell you just from the initial discussions of this, probably three and a half, 4 years ago, where we initially talked about it, and where it is now is night and day difference. And that really just comes from strong collaboration, creative minds, and people that don't hear an idea and run from it, but hear something and say, let's see if we can do that. So,
Great.
John, take a minute and tell us a little bit about you and ImagePrint Red.
Yeah, if you're not familiar with ColorByte software, we've been around for about 30 years, and we've done everything in the imaging world, from being one of the first developers to develop software for the Iris graphics printer 30 years ago, to drum scanner software, and full circle around to mainstream software for printing in photography and fine art and a lot of other areas. And one of the when we're talking about Cut It Out and how it all came about was more or less looking at a trend in the large format printing industry, where we were seeing more and more users of both our software and just large format printers in general. And they weren't using them unless they were printing, large, pieces of art or posters or, whatever their business was. And if somebody was to inquire about, let's say from a photography standpoint, I need a few hundred or even 1,000 small 4x5s, 5x7s, 8x10s or whatnot. People would turn those jobs away because the labor involved in cutting those out from a roll large format standpoint was just too labor intensive.
Yeah,
It
I
just
mean,
wasn't worth anybody's time to do it. And the small photo printers just weren't great quality. So you're stuck in this, middle ground of, yeah, I can do really great quality, but it's going to take me more time and cost than what I can charge for the job, or I can use a little photo printer and the quality just wouldn't be all that great, and the expense in ink and paper at that size would also be much greater. So we looked at well, how do we overcome that? And so we started looking around at cutters, these types of cutters from Graphtec, and there's other companies that make them too, Suma. But specifically, we narrowed in on Graphtec because they had cutters that were very robust and industrial like, yet a line that was more affordable to what we saw our customer base as possibly purchasing. These cutters are typically used to cut vinyl, right? They're not really used to cut through paper. They're used to do what we call a kiss cut, where we just cut the adhesive portion of the media and then you peel it off of the backing. Mm-hmm. So when you start cutting through paper, you have a whole different series of problems, and those problems had to be overcome with technology. And there were times where we threw our hands up and thought, well, maybe this can't be done, but we kept at it, and we had to really study how, when you cut paper, how does that paper disassemble and the integrity of the paper fall apart as you put more cuts on it, and what do we need to do to keep it together? And that led us to coming up with what we call our hanger system. Mm-hmm. and then giving control of that hanger system to the user, because when you're cutting different medias, you can get away with more liberal or more strict cutting parameters depending on what you're cutting. Mm-hmm. And so in talking to both yourself and some other people in the industry like Bart and with Dorado Graphics, and we'll probably at some point in time drag him in on one of these. Mm-hmm. we kind of came up with a solution that would turn a large format printer basically into a mini lab.
So let's backtrack a little bit, because I kind of want to get into kind of the thinking of where this came from and kind of the steps of where we jumped through the various hoops of what the initial vision was. Because I remember the first time I actually talked to you about this, and I remember my wife, who Liliana, who is what I call a crafting queen, had a bunch of Cricuts, and she would come to me and say, "Can I use your printer to print some paper on to cut some stuff on my Cricut?" And I'm like, "Yeah, go ahead." And she would print stuff out and then go over and cut these really cool things. They were just arts and crafts and cards and pieces and stuff like that. And I said, "Can you print photos and cut photos on that?" Because in my mind, as a photographer, I was a studio owner, and just like you said, we had large format printers in our studio, but we only ever printed the big wall portraits and canvases and stuff like that. Because while we knew it was cheaper to print things on the large format printers, we lost that profit as soon as we took the time to cut it. And I would have, my interns or my staff would cut everything when we did small stuff, and it just always seemed like a waste of time. So when I saw her doing this, I'm like, well, "Can you print photos and cut photos on it?" She said, "You can, but the software that comes with the Cricut doesn't have any kind of color management in it, and it's limited 6x8. And I'm like, yeah, that's good. But I know this guy that has this really great piece of software that I think he could do this." So I remember calling you up and saying, "Hey, you think you could drive a large cutter?" Because I had been at a show with Bart Jordan at Dorado that you mentioned, and I saw the big Graphtec cutters that he had. And at that time, he was just doing stickers and things like that. So I reached out to you and said, "Do you think you could drive a cutter?" And you're like, "Well, if I can get the SDK for the cutter, I could probably have no problem driving it." So I think you and Bart reached out to somebody at Graphtec and got the SDK. And within 2 days, you called me back and like, "Yeah, I'm driving the cutter. I got this. No problem." So you were making paths and you were jumping leaps and bounds. It's like, in my mind, when I think of something, I'm thinking this is going to take years to develop. And 2 days later, you're doing it. So
we were doing the rough surface of it. There were a lot of technical issues. There were some hurdles that we had to get over, but
obviously,
in general, driving the cutter wasn't the hard part. But when it just brings me back to those early conversations when we told Graphtec what our plans were. They thought we were crazy.
Their mind, they were like, "This is never going to work."
Never going to work. I remember. Never.
Why would anybody do that? And it's like, and we're sitting here thinking, you don't get it. There's this massive untapped market. How's it going to possibly
make this work?
We could potentially open you up to customers that you've never had before and double or triple the number of people that are using your machines. So the fact that they weren't like coming to us running with open arms was almost like, what have you got to lose? So they gave you what you needed, but it was just kind of a head scratcher.
And now when I see those same guys, it's kind of like, I can't believe nobody ever thought of doing that before you guys did.
Because we were all just with them at Printing United,
in
Las Vegas, and they had a booth, and they were showing the solution in their booth. They were, we're gonna be showing the solution over there, and we had the cutter in our booth, so we had people going back and forth from the Canon booth, where we were showing the cutting solution and showing some of the cool stuff that we're going to talk about in a few minutes that it can do. Because like you said, this was initially something that I think when we first talked about it, was very short-sighted. We kind of, with the blinders on, we were so hyper-focused on the photography.
Let's just cut photos. Let's just see if it had to be simple and easy, which means, as people who were familiar with image print, as you brought images into our layout window, we wanted the cut parameters to automatically be applied, meaning all you did was turn on, cut it out, and everything else was automatic. You didn't have to think about it. You moved an image around, you sized it, you cropped it. No matter what you did to it, the cut changed with it, right? And and then if you wanted to put a border on it to spread that cut boundary out a little bit, make it look like an old-fashioned photograph, or you wanted to put rounded edges on it or deco edges on it, all of these things started rolling in and going. Okay, now what we're looking at is we're looking at making this a custom die cutter,
Mm-hmm.
meaning you got a shape, you got something you want to cut. All you need to do now is design the shape, save it as an SVG file, and now you have a custom die cutter. And it's as simple as that. We can put that die cut on any image, on anything we want to, all day long. Size it, scale it, whatever we needed to do. And, and so we just started then kind of ballooning with ideas of, well, what if we could do this? And what if we could do that? Well, how about,
just went crazy.
This would be crazy for K-8, or even K-12 when we get into
we did a focus group. I forgot about, we did the focus group where you came down,
right,
and we put this in front of them, and we just kind of did a basic presentation on it. We had teachers and principals and administrators. We just did a basic presentation on it, and their minds went crazy. They started throwing things out that we hadn't even thought of. And at this point, we were still just kind of at the photos and just bare shapes.
Right.
We hadn't gotten into some of the other things we're going to talk about in a few minutes. This was just, being able to cut out letters and stuff like that, and just doing kind of the print stuff. And then they started talking about applications, and it went a little nuts for them. It was really cool to kind of see. And that's kind of been the big takeaway for me on the marketing of this, was just through so many meetings like that and talking with so many different industries, that it kind of, in my mind, it rung, the only limitation is your imagination. If you've got the resource of paper and ink and a cutter, anything you can wrap your mind around, you could probably do with this.
Yep.
And then you start thinking about origami and all these other things. Like, wait, it doesn't have to be flat.
Right. I need to get another webcam, because I could just pan to the side of my desk here, and I have a cutter in my office now, and I couldn't imagine living without it, because and it's really something that we hope our audience will see as we move into the actual projects that we do here, that once you've experienced cutting along with large format printing, the two really go hand in hand together. And like you said, unlocking creativity and no longer dealing with, life is just a rectangle, right? Now being able to combine shapes to it, and how we use this to market ourselves, or when we go to an event to have things to give away. And we don't have to go to a printer and print 1,000 of them or 2,000 of them and, throw 3/4 of them away because they no longer apply to the next event we're going to do. And that expense just keeps adding up and adding up to the point where, we just stop doing it because it doesn't make sense. Well, this makes sense in a lot of areas of, large format printing in so many ways, not only just cutting photographs for, people who are portrait photographers, wedding photographers, sports photographers, school photographers, list goes on and on and on. But, how we use it to promote our businesses and everything else that we can do with it. And we're going to get into all of that in these episodes. And that's going to be the really fun thing, because, although we've done a lot of training videos on how to use the stuff, we really haven't done anything that's just an informal conversation of, here, we're going to do a project and we're going to show you it start to finish. And, hey, if somebody else wants to leave a message on how to do something, we can try to show that as well in future episodes.
Yeah, we definitely want you to comment down below if there's something that you want to see us discuss in these conversations, because like John said, these are going to always be kind of an informal conversation in a way that, one of the things that John and I have had in our time working together, we talk several times a week, and it's always just a conversation where we're kind of sounding boards for each other for ideas or problems or challenges of things that come up. And, we were like, if we could record these conversations, the value in this conversation to the end user, because they get to hear how we come up with these ideas. And if they could be kind of a fly on the wall for this conversation, maybe they could throw their voice in. So that's what we want you to do. We want you to be a fly on the wall for the conversation and say, hey, next time, can you talk about this? So whether it's us discussing an idea, the potential for an idea, or even literally just showing you on screen how to do something, how to build something, how to create cut paths, how to
Yeah.
do anything you want to do. That's what we want to do, and do it in a way that is a little bit more interactive for
Yeah.
you.
I'm going to reach
Um,
behind me and just grab some stuff here.
Yeah, one of my favorite things that we developed, because after we did the photo portion where we were developing this for photos, we moved into stickers, and then we moved to other things.
Remember these?
Oh yeah, that's the basketball player.
So
So
one of our first how-to episodes next, I've already done most of the recording of it, is how to cut magnets. This is Magnum Magnetic Media, and it's on a roll, and it, believe it or not, it feeds right through the Canon printer, and you can cut it on these cutters, and I'm going to show you how to do it.
awesome.
And it's amazing. People ask about magnets all the time. Can you do magnets? And it's like, not only can we do magnets, we can, we can do all kinds of stuff with magnets.
Yeah, I think when we started getting into medias, and I look forward to getting to that as its own topic, the
Right.
different things that you can do that aren't just plain paper, like the outlet here. This is one of my favorite things to hand out at shows and give to people just for fun. It's on repositionable peel and stick, and I look forward to doing topics on, hey, what are some of the medias that you can
Yeah.
use on this? I mean, we've done T-shirts that are heat
Yep.
transfers. We've done peel and sticks. We've done just about everything, and we've tested on a lot of things. I mean, we've tested on things that didn't work as well. So being able to get into that is going to be really great. Being able to talk about things like packaging.
Yep.
That's another big thing that, I mean, you like to tease about it now, but
Yeah.
talking about something like packaging
and hopefully we can get some of these companies that are doing packaging already with the solution. We can get some guest speakers.
Yeah, absolutely.
And have them, give the audience a rundown on how they're using it. We just did a big install at Gorilla Glue, and they're using it for all their packaging prototypes and whatnot. So yeah, there's a lot of really interesting stuff going on with it, and we hope to just be able to bring that to the audience.
Yeah, there's some major companies out there that are using the solution that, it's one of those things that it fits a niche that didn't exist before, because before it was either you had nothing or you had 20 million of something, but there was never what I would call small batch printing and cutting, because anybody that was doing, whether it was labels or packaging or anything, even cutting 4x6s, 5x7s, and 8x10s, you were talking about mass volume. There wasn't a scenario where you could affordably print 10 of something or 100 of something. You could do it, but you would pay an extreme amount because the machines that could do it, the setup for them was so expensive that they were going to charge you for 10,000 even if you got 100 of them. Yeah. So if you were a small business looking for packages or labels or magnets, you had to spend a ton of money to do it. And it really put a lot of businesses out there in a situation where they wanted to grow their business or they wanted to show their businesses in a certain way, and they never could. And it didn't allow them to compete with major national brands because they had deep pockets and small businesses didn't. Right. But then on top of that, you have major businesses that had afforded them the ability to do proofing of packaging and stuff. They're still outsourcing because they have the deep pockets to send things off to other countries and do millions of pieces. But the prototyping for them used to take months and months and months, and now they can do it in a day. Right. So the applications are just endless. So I think it's one of our favorite conversations to have is when we sit back and we start talking about the different applications that we hadn't thought of. Yesterday, actually, John, I was doing a training with an end user, and while they went to do a cutting thing, the salesperson from that stayed behind and said, "Hey, they're going to walk over to the cutter real quick. I need to ask you a question." And he had a plumbing company that was currently taking 8-foot sheets and what they were doing was hand cutting a shape out that they would then hold against something and then take like a chalk thing and do a chalk line through it so that they could then weld that line. And they're like,
they needed a stencil. It's a stenciling
but one that they
Oh,
could throw away after every single
right.
use. Like,
But
can they
yet,
do something permanent? They're like, no, because it changes slightly every time.
right,
I'm like, is this something that they do daily, weekly, monthly? How often do they do it? Because, there is kind of that point of, you need to make sure you're going to use this solution enough to make it worth the investment. He's like, oh no, they do this a lot every single day. So, and I'm like, I never would have thought of doing an 8 foot long, just sliver of a template in a round
yeah,
shape that you put against something and then mark off so that that's where you're going to do your weld. I'm like,
right.
okay.
Yeah, I
So, and
mean,
it's just, there's things that you and I haven't even scratched the surface
right.
of thinking about, that when you hear other people. So that's one of those things. If you're watching this and you're like, well, can it do this? Or what about this industry? Or what about that? Throw it out at us, because we always want to hear new ideas for places and applications, and do some testing and see if we
Right.
can make it work and do that. That's the fun of this for us. This isn't one of those things that we do, oh, it's a job, this is where we go punch in from 9 to 5. No, this is fun. This is, the fact that we get to come and be creative and come up with new ways to create solutions to help people do their jobs is absolutely amazing. It's an absolute
Yeah.
blast.
Yeah. So, we'll close this one out. We just wanted
Yeah.
to introduce ourselves and let everybody know what to expect next. And if you stayed till the end, we appreciate it. And we look forward to rolling into some actual live projects using the software in the cutter and everything else in between.
Yeah, hopefully we can get some behind the scenes when we're on site doing some installs, and
Yeah.
let you see some of the things that we do. We do some pretty cool stuff that's
Allow us to put our cameras to use too for some other
absolutely.
things.
I
So,
look forward to that.
yeah. So, anyways, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.
Yeah, thanks for joining us on Cut It Out.